What if Hitler had become an artist instead of a dictator? What if Adolf Hitler, one of history's most infamous figures, had been accepted into art school? Would the world we live in today be completely unrecognizable? Would a single change in his story have prevented atrocities like the Holocaust, World War II, and the rise of the Nazi regime? These are daunting and thought-provoking questions that dive into the realm of alternate history, where imagination and speculation intertwine with reality. Adolf Hitler wasn't always the intimidating political figure whose actions devastated millions. As a young man, his dream wasn't to conquer nations, but to capture landscapes and architecture on a blank canvas. Fueled by disappointment, Hitler eventually abandoned his dream and turned his attention toward political ideologies that would later bring him to dangerous prominence. But let's pause here. Imagine if one of those applications had been accepted. What if his portfolio had been deemed good enough for Vienna's prestigious art school? What happens to history when we remove him from its bloodiest chapters? One of the most significant implications of Hitler's alternate path as an artist is the prevention of the Nazi regime's rise to power. Following World War I, Germany was in a state of economic and political turmoil. Widespread poverty, unemployment, and national humiliation after the Treaty of Versailles created fertile ground for extremist ideologies to take root. However, Hitler's fiery rhetoric and singular ability to galvanize public support were key driving forces behind the Nazi Party's rise. Without Hitler in the picture, it's entirely possible that the Nazi regime never would have existed, or at the very least, would have lacked the cohesion and brutality it displayed under his leadership. So what might that mean for Germany and Europe as a whole? Could Germany have recovered more peacefully from WWI? Or would another leader have risen to fill the power vacuum left behind? Could a different extremist ideology have taken root? Or would Germany have avoided authoritarianism altogether? Without Hitler, there's a strong possibility that World War II, as we know it, might never have occurred. The invasion of Poland, the occupation of France, and the series of military events that shaped the 20th century were all triggered by his ambitions and policies. Imagine instead a Europe that avoided the devastation of another large-scale conflict just decades after World War I. Cultural landmarks and infrastructure, which were decimated during the war, might still stand today. Entire cities like Warsaw, Dresden, and Hiroshima might have remained unscathed. Generations of families displaced or destroyed by war would have grown and thrived in completely different ways. Economies across Europe might have steadily recovered following WWI without needing the Marshall Plan or rebuilding efforts post-WW2. But it's important to ask, would war have been entirely off the table? Europe's political climate was volatile, and colonial tensions, territorial disputes, and the grievances of other nations may still have led to conflict. A different kind of world war could have erupted, shaped by entirely different circumstances and players. However, the scale, scope, and devastation of WW2 as we know it likely would have been avoided. Perhaps the most heart-wrenching and consequential part of this alternate timeline to imagine is a world without the Holocaust. Without Hitler's anti-Semitic policies and his systematic genocide, the lives of 6 million Jews, along with millions of Romani people, disabled individuals, LGBTQ+ individuals and others, might have been spared. Entire communities that were erased or displaced during the Holocaust could have continued to flourish throughout Europe. What might the cultural, intellectual, and economic contributions of these communities have been in a timeline free from genocide? Jewish populations in Europe were vital to advancements in science, art, philosophy, and commerce prior to WW2. In this alternate scenario, they might have continued making groundbreaking developments that influenced the world in ways we can only imagine. However, it's worth considering whether systemic prejudice and anti-Semitism, which existed long before Hitler, would still have manifested in some form. Were Hitler's policies a unique horror, or was he capitalizing on an undercurrent of hate that might have surfaced differently under another leader? Either way, one cannot deny that the Holocaust's absence would have profoundly changed human history. The effects of avoiding Hitler's rise wouldn't end with Germany or even Europe. World War II set the stage for the geopolitical landscape we live with today, and without it, the world's power structures might have looked very different. For instance, the rise of the United States and the Soviet Union as superpowers was directly shaped by their roles in WW2. From the Marshall Plan to the Cold War, much of 20th century history revolved around the tension and competition between these two nations. Without WW2, America might not have experienced its post-war economic boom. The Soviet Union too might have developed more slowly without the industrial and territorial gains it achieved during and after the war. Technological advancements such as those in computers, nuclear energy and space exploration were also accelerated by war-related research and competition. The space race, for example, stemmed from wartime rocketry experiments by scientists like Wernher von Braun. In an alternate timeline, would humanity's first steps on the moon have been delayed by decades? What about Asia? Without Japan's role in WW2 and the aftermath of the atomic bombings, the political landscape of East Asia could look completely different. The same can be said of Africa, the Middle East, and South America, where the ripple effects of WW2 profoundly shaped decolonization, alliances, and future conflicts. Even in this reimagined reality where Hitler never led Germany, it's important to consider whether another major conflict might have erupted. After all, the political climate of the first half of the 20th century was rife with tension. Germany's post-WWI struggles weren't solely due to Hitler. They were rooted in crushing reparations, economic hardship, and national humiliation. Would another authoritarian figure have exploited this environment to rise to power? Or would Germany's direction have radically shifted under more moderate leadership? Similarly, rising tensions in Asia, conflicts over colonial territories, and ideological divides between communism and capitalism still existed without Hitler in the picture. While WW2 as we know it might have been avoided, another large-scale war might have taken its place, albeit with different causes, participants, and outcomes. As fascinating as it is to speculate about how history would change, one thing becomes clear. History is woven from an intricate web of events, personalities, and chance. Could a single change, Hitler becoming an artist instead of a dictator, truly have altered the entire course of global history in such profound ways? Or are wars, genocides, and power struggles inevitable parts of human civilization? This unpredictability is part of what makes alternate history so engaging. It challenges us to think about the significance of individuals in history versus the broader circumstances that shape societies. So, what about you? What are your thoughts on this alternate timeline? Do you think a world without Hitler's rise would have been peaceful and prosperous, or would history's turbulence have taken a different form? Could someone else have risen to power in Germany with similarly devastating results, or was Hitler's role solely unique? We want to hear your take. Drop your thoughts in the comments below and join the discussion. Exploring alternate histories like this isn't just entertaining, it also helps us appreciate the complex forces that shape our world. If you found this dive into speculative history fascinating, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel for more videos like this one. From what if Rome never fell to what if the Cold War went hot? There are endless possibilities, and we can't wait to explore them with you. Thanks for watching, and see you next time.